The London winter lashed Mayfair with a biting chill, while twilight crept over the cobblestone streets. Inside Arthur Finch's antique shop, the air was heavy and dense, carrying the unmistakable scent of centuries of history, old leather, damp wood, and the almost electric metallic tinge of forgotten artifacts. The dim evening light barely penetrated the dusty windows, casting long, ghostly shadows that danced across the overcrowded shelves, where priceless objects lay in oppressive silence. Despite the palpable wealth that filled every corner, a sense of loneliness and stagnation permeated the space, a stark contrast to life outside. Arthur Finch, 50, moved with almost robotic precision among the shadows, his tall, slender figure encased in an impeccable wool suit, his polished leather shoes echoing softly on the hardwood floor. His grey hair was perfectly combed, but his icy blue eyes held a void no fortune could fill. He was the Soulsmith, an appraiser of rare artifacts who secretly forged destinies through arcane rituals. Yet his own soul seemed to have been forged in ice, sealed off by an ancient trauma that had disconnected him from the world and himself, keeping him prisoner in his morbid routine. On that particularly frigid night, a snowstorm was beginning to batter London, and the antique shop's doors were strangely ajar. Outside, 10-year-old Elara shivered from cold and hunger, the last wilted flowers clutched in her small hands. Her vibrant green eyes, despite her exhaustion, shone with stubborn curiosity as she noticed the metallic glow coming from within. Driven by a desperate need, she peeked in and saw Arthur in a secret room lit by candles and arcane symbols, engrossed in a complex ritual, placing a pulsating necklace inside an ebony box. In a clumsy movement of childish curiosity, Elara bumped into a small pedestal, knocking over an antique vase. The thunderous sound shattered the dense silence of the antique shop, shattering Arthur's concentration. He turned abruptly, his icy eyes fixed on the small, huddled figure. Elara, startled, took a step back, and in a barely audible whisper, a plea that seemed to come from the depths of her starving soul, she uttered the words that would resonate in Arthur's armored heart. "Please, sir, can you give me something to eat? I haven't eaten in 2 days." The phrase, simple in its formulation, carried the child's explicit vulnerability, striking Arthur in a way he hadn't expected, as if Elara's hunger were a mirror for his own soul's hunger. A small fissure opened in his heart. "Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now we'll continue with the video." At first, Elara's question generated an almost automatic irritation in Arthur, an annoyance at the interruption of his routine and the invasion of his meticulously secluded space. He, the Soulsmith, who dealt with cursed objects and arcane rituals, felt deeply uncomfortable with a child's raw vulnerability, yet something in Elara's emerald eyes, a paradoxical blend of fear and indomitable resilience, stopped him. It wasn't misery that struck him, but the stubborn flame of hope that lingered in her expression, preventing him from simply dismissing her with a curt gesture or a coin. Arthur's past was a fortress built on pain. Years before, an unspeakable tragedy had stolen his daughter, leaving an abysmal void in his existence. Guilt, like a slow poison, had corroded his ability to feel, transforming him into the cold and distant man he had become. He sought control in the world of rare artifacts and occult rituals, a desperate attempt to forge the fate of others, to compensate for his powerlessness over his own. His vast fortune, inherited from generations of shady dealings, was merely armor protecting him from life, not a source of joy or purpose. To his surprise, Arthur heard himself invite Elara in. The gesture, so atypical for a man averse to any human contact, was driven by an almost unconscious impulse. He offered her a hot chocolate, the steam dancing in the chilly air, and a piece of bread. Elara, hungry, accepted with silent gratitude, her curious eyes roaming the antique shop. Every object, every shadow seemed to tell a story in her fertile imagination. The somber surroundings for her were a treasure to be explored, not a refuge from solitude. As Elara savoured her hot chocolate, her curious eyes fixed on a small silver medallion displayed in a dusty display case. "What is this, sir?" she asked softly. Arthur, to his own astonishment, found himself describing the object's history in detail, a touch of genuine fascination in his voice he hadn't felt in decades. That medallion, which he'd seen hundreds of times, was given new life by the child's pure gaze. It was as if Elara's curiosity had unearthed something dormant within him, a spark of interest he'd thought lost forever. The connection deepened when Elara, with the innocence of a child unafraid of the truth, asked about his family. The seemingly simple question struck a nerve in Arthur, awakening the memory of his daughter lost in a tragic accident years before. The image of his little girl, her golden hair and easy laugh, flooded his mind. Looking at Elara, her eyes filled with a stubborn light, Arthur projected onto her the image of his own daughter, and was overcome by an overwhelming wave of long-repressed emotions, a tsunami of pain and longing that left him reeling. In that moment of profound vulnerability, Arthur made an impulsive and unexpected decision. "You can stay," he said, his voice hoarse, almost unrecognizable. He offered Elara a place to sleep in the antique shop, a room that belonged to his daughter, saying she could stay as long as she needed. The emotional motive for this decision was not charity, but an unconscious and desperate desire to make amends for an ancient loss, to fill the void left by his daughter's absence, and to find a form of redemption for the guilt that haunted him, a guilt that had suffocated him for years. Elara's presence in the antique shop completely destabilized Arthur's orderly and solitary life. Internally, he struggled with a deep fear of attachment again, a trauma of loss that had turned him into a cold and distant man. He feared reliving the pain of the past, the feeling of powerlessness in the face of loss, and pushing Elara away as he had with everyone who tried to get close. It was a constant battle between the desire to protect and the need to remain safe in his emotional fortress. Externally, Mayfair society, with its rigidity and veiled judgments, did not look kindly on the presence of a street child in Arthur Finch's venerable antique shop. Rumours began to spread like wildfire, gossip whispered at afternoon teas and exclusive clubs. He faced scrutiny and criticism from his peers and even former clients, who viewed the situation as an inappropriate eccentricity, or worse, a social misfortune. The image of the Soulsmith was being tarnished by the presence of an innocent. The social worker, Mrs. Albright, a well-meaning woman but strict in her convictions about child welfare, began investigating Elara's situation. Her regular visits to the antique shop became a constant reminder of the fragility of the situation, raising the very real possibility of returning Elara to the orphanage or finding a suitable family, one that fits society's standards. Bureaucracy and laws seemed an impenetrable barrier between Arthur and the only true connection he had found in years. Furthermore, Elara's fragile health, the result of years of deprivation on the icy streets of London, began to manifest itself in a more worrying way. A persistent cough, which made her tremble in fits, and sporadic fevers, which left her pale and weak, made the situation more urgent and real. Arthur felt a growing despair, a sense of helplessness that took him back to the pain of his past, reviving the fear of losing someone he was beginning to love. Each coughing fit was a punch to his chest. The situation reached a critical point one snowy night when Elara, in the midst of a high fever, fainted on the cold floor of the antique shop, her small body shaking uncontrollably. The door opened at the same moment, and Mrs. Albright, on another of her unexpected visits, witnessed the scene. Her eyes, previously merely searching, now fixed on Arthur with a cold, unwavering resolve. She would take Elara to a hospital and then to an orphanage, where she would receive proper care. Panic swept over Arthur, a feeling he hadn't experienced since the loss of his daughter, mixed with a devastating revelation: he couldn't lose her. The air in the antique shop was electric with tension as Arthur refused to let Elara go. His voice, normally controlled and distant, now echoed with a pain and attachment Mrs. Albright had never witnessed. He was no longer the unattainable Soulsmith, but a desperate man, fighting to hold on to the only source of light in his life. Mrs. Albright, for her part, maintained her professional demeanor, but her eyes held a hint of curiosity and surprise at Arthur's sudden emotional outburst. The silence of the falling snow outside contrasted with the swirling emotions within those walls. In a moment of vulnerability that shattered all his defenses, Arthur began to speak. The words flowed from him like a dammed river finally bursting its banks. For the first time in years, he spoke of the loss of his daughter, the accident that took her from him, and the crushing guilt that haunted him, transforming him into an empty cocoon. His voice broke as he described how Elara, with her purity and hope, had become an unexpected beacon in his life, illuminating the darkness that consumed him. He confessed that in trying to forge destinies for others through his dark rituals, he had forgotten to forge his own. Elara, ironically, had helped him find purpose again, a reason to live that went beyond the accumulation of wealth and self-imposed isolation. The mask of coldness fell completely, revealing a man torn apart by pain, but also reborn through a connection he never imagined possible. Genuine emotion infused every word, and Mrs. Albright listened in silence, her serious expression beginning to soften. With tears in his eyes, Arthur made an emotional plea, a request that came from the depths of his soul. He begged Mrs. Albright for a chance to care for Elara, promising to give her everything his own daughter could not have: love, security, a future. He offered to see a psychoanalyst, open his home to regular visits from social services, and provide the best medical care for Elara, no matter the cost. It was an acknowledgement that loving again, despite the risk of loss, was a path worth taking. Mrs. Albright, moved by Arthur's sincerity and vulnerability, finally agreed to give him a chance. Her decision wasn't an abandonment of her principles, but a recognition of the transformative power of love. She imposed strict conditions, regular follow-up with social services, and demonstration of significant improvements in Elara's health. In that moment, the bond between Arthur and Elara was solidified unshakably, no longer as a favor or charity, but as the formation of a true family, born of pain, but forged in hope and compassion. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now we'll continue with the video. 6 months passed, and the transformation in Arthur Finch's antique shop was visible and palpable. The windows, once dusty and dark, now allowed sunlight to flood the room, revealing a space that had been dark and oppressive, but now radiated an unexpected warmth. The musty, old smell was replaced by the aroma of new books and fresh flowers brought by Elara. The girls' laughter echoed through the hallways, a sound Arthur never thought he would hear within those walls, dispelling the silence that had haunted him for decades and filling the emptiness in his chest. Elara, her health fully restored, now had a sparkle in her eyes and a genuine smile that never faded. She helped Arthur in the antique shop, organizing books, cleaning the shelves, and with her innate curiosity, learning about each artifact. Her green eyes, once marked by hunger, now lit up with the knowledge that Arthur patiently and lovingly shared. The so-called Soulsmith taught Elara not about obscure rituals, but about the beauty of history and the magic contained within each object. The word father, spoken by Elara, soft and full of affection, was the most precious melody to Arthur. Elara's adoption was official, a milestone that sealed the unbreakable bond between them, legally recognizing what their hearts had once united. But Arthur's transformation didn't stop there. With Mrs. Albright's tireless support, He channeled his vast fortune into founding a small charity dedicated to street children in London. The building, once an abandoned warehouse, was renovated and transformed into a welcoming home, with warm rooms, a vibrant library, and classrooms, where children previously invisible to society found shelter, education, and most importantly, hope. News of Arthur Finch's profound change spread quickly throughout Mayfair, a shock to those who knew him as the reclusive and enigmatic antiques shop owner. Once an isolated figure, he was now viewed with respect and admiration. Arthur's new philosophy of life was evident in every gesture, every word. He remained the smith of souls, but now he forged destinies not through dark rituals and cursed objects, but through acts of compassion, love, and dedication to others, demonstrating that true alchemy lies in transforming pain into hope, loneliness into connection, and material wealth into a catalyst for human kindness. Arthur's life became a living testament to the fact that love is the greatest of fortunes. Have you ever done a kind act that changed a life? Leave a little heart if you think love is more powerful than any wealth. Subscribe for more second chance stories. Believe in the power of change. Share this story.